Okay,
Hello.
I just want to ask one thing.
Sure.
So you were talking about how the merger with the $4 billion in stocks that he could potentially get, you're saying that it's not going to go through in time to pay it off, right?
It might or it might not. The problem with him is that I don't know if you know this about stocks. Every single person knows that that owns stock and that knows that Donald Trump's looking to get out. They're gonna meme stock it. It's probably gonna boom at first because people are greedy, but 6 months come, they know that Donald Trump's about to drop 70 something million shares. So it may be worth 4 billion now, but in 6 months from now, or whenever the SPAC goes into play, who knows what it'll be worth. Will he make money off of it? Probably, yeah. Is he going to make 4 billion? Doubtful. Very doubtful.
Okay, so let's say what you think is going to happens. So let's say he gets the money to pay off the debt, right? That could happen.
Sure. Yeah.
And let's say that he pays off the debt. I would see that as a win, right?
Did he pay it for him?
No, that the debt gets paid.
But who's the win
right?
for?
For Trump, that he doesn't lose any properties or anything.
I mean, he's going to lose $550 million.
Okay. And let's say he gets a few $1 billion from the stocks, right? Is that really going to hurt him?
I don't think he's going to get a few $1 billion from the stock, to be honest with you.
But
I think that's what the value of the stock is because people are meme stocking it. But the moment that he's supposed to go public, or he can sell out a stock, which is 6 months after the SPAC goes public, then I fully expect them to drop their stock.
So what if it doesn't? And he doesn't.
Well, I mean, okay, let's say you're holding on to $1,000 worth of stock and you know that Donald Trump's got to sell out to pay off debt. You going to hold on to that or are you going to sell it so you can retain the money?
I mean, honestly, I think there'd be some people to hold on to it to help them. Yes, I do think that.
That's not how the market works. That's not how it works when you have tens of millions of shares. And you have a guy at the top with billions of dollars that's like, nah, short it to scare people. Like
I don't understand everything about stocks, but I do understand stocks.
So you're gonna have tens of millions of shares that Donald Trump owns, and they know that come due in September, he is going to have his appeal. And it should be out quickly after that as to whether or not his appeal's gone through. Mm-hmm. At which point he'll be forced to produce $550 million, both to the company that he owes back, that he borrowed for the bonding purposes, because I think he could probably get a bond on $175 million, and to the state of New York, both of those. And so the only way that the easiest way for him to liquidate assets is through stock, right? Because he doesn't have any liens attached to it. Nothing. He doesn't have anything attached to it. He can sell it at will. The easiest way for him to pay off this debt is to sell a stock.
Yes.
So you're talking about tens of millions of shares hitting in the market, and people are going to be watching that. Even if people hold on, Donald Trump's still going to sell. You're talking about dumping tens of millions of shares overnight or in the course of a couple of weeks. You're talking about dumping tens of millions of shares at least to try and cover his loss. That alone is going to tank the stock.
So let's say he gets enough money to pay off the debt.
He probably will. So I just to say he probably will get enough money to pay off the debt from the stock. I don't think that's going to be an issue for him. But is it going to be $4 billion where he has a ton of money left over? No.
Well, no, but then he still has all that money from all of his properties. So he still is going to be a very rich man, right?
Well, here's the problem. I don't think he has that much money in his properties.
So right now, I would think that Trump is winning in court. Would you say that, right? Yeah, I understand he probably doesn't want to pay that money, but this is a victory for him, I would say, right?
Well, is it a victory? I don't think it's a victory to lose $550 million. Does it make it easier for him? Probably, yeah. But I think the problem is that he doesn't have that much equity left in his properties, because the fact is he was over leveraging his properties, right? So let's assume that he had a property like
I don't think so.
Well, no, he was over leveraging his properties. So assume for a second he had a property that was worth $10 million and he over leveraged it for $100 million, which is typical for him. He would have over leveraged it 10 or 30 times. That's normal. That's what he did. That's part of the fraud. He's overvalued his property, left out important aspects of it by 10, 30 times. So if he took out, let's just say that he took out 20% of what he fraudulently claimed his loan is, he's over leveraged on a property. He owes more than the property's worth. And on top of that, he has liens against property, so he can't do anything with them. So it was probably easier for him to have Letitia James seize his than it was to try and disconnect himself and work through all the legal trouble of getting rid of these properties.
Yes.
So I don't think it's a win for him to lose what's going to end up being like a quarter. Well, he probably isn't worth that much, but probably a quarter. It's probably a quarter to a half of everything he has. This is a win for him in the fact that he has more time, but it's a loss overall. You're going to lose $550 million.
So, okay, so I want to know something. So what are all the cases now? One of the cases the Supreme Court has helped us out with, right?
I think you mistake getting, like, I think you think that all help is leading him to not face criminal conviction or not, you know?
So is he going to face criminal conviction in the case the Supreme Court helped us out with before he could become president?
Are you talking about the immunity case?
Yes.
In the instance of that, I don't. It's so. Here's the thing. It does help him, but it also doesn't. Tanya Chutkin has said, regardless of what happens, she is going to do everything she can to have a trial.
So let's say the trial doesn't happen before the election. Now these are two cases where he's not going to face a conviction, right?
Well, so his trial is set up in the New York case for April 15th, barring the Supreme Court holding it. But they would essentially, I mean, here's the problem that the Supreme Court is under. If they push that decision into the next session, into the October session, they're going to be viewed as partisan hacks. I mean, you're just going to undermine the legitimacy of the court because that doesn't happen.
I'm not trying to be rude. So you said that the Supreme Court could hold the Letitia James trial until the next session. Is that what you're saying?
No, the Alvin Bragg trial. I mean, they could potentially hold it as being a presidential immunity thing, but it would undermine the court to such a disturbing degree that I don't think that they would do it, because that just doesn't happen where they hold over work or hold over decisions into the next one. So they're going to have it's going to be the April. They're going to have a hearing in April, and then
that's the immunity. It'll
be a month or two, right, to decide. They could decide quickly. They did with the last one. Maybe it takes a month. So you're talking April, May, end of May. You're talking June, July, August, trial in September, or if it takes another month, trial in October. Chutkin has stated she is going to try him. It is going to happen if the Supreme Court hands it back to him in enough time. They will force it through. Juan Merchan out of New York, he is stated that he's going to have the trial.
Could the Supreme Court do the same thing that they did with the immunity case with the hush money case?
They could. They could, but the problem is that one presents a serious problem because most of the facts of that case happened when Donald Trump was not in office.
Like before he was president?
Yeah. So, and the stuff that did happen criminally happened in 2019, but most of the facts of that case happened either early in his presidency or before. And you can't make the argument that in any way is connected to immunity. This would be, like, just from an objective perspective, not if you like Trump, right? But giving immunity to someone to that degree would destroy our democracy. I couldn't imagine a world in which John Roberts signed off on that. What he is willing to try and do is stonewall this case. I don't know, maybe to seem more impartial, but it just looks like hackery.
Well, you didn't think they would take up the immunity case, right?
No, nobody did, for good reason.
And so there could be the possibility that two of his cases the Supreme Court could take over.
Yeah, he's already appealed this case to the Supreme Court. The problem is they set the schedule up for April 15th, and the Supreme Court's going to hear it on the April 22nd or something like that.
And so what are the other cases that he's in?
So I just to point out, the New York case will happen before the election unless the Supreme Court does something insane. And you shouldn't be for that. You should want to know if he did it. Unless they do something insane to stop this case, it will happen. The reason the Chutkin, so they'll have to wait until New York, if the Supreme Court holds us up on an immunity case, the New York will have to wait until the decision comes down, at which point they can try him. Tanya Chutkin, however, because that case came about later, like the Alvin Bragg case was the first one that he was charged in. When that case comes down, there hasn't been enough time between that case being initiated on Donald Trump and him going to trial in the Tanya Chutkin case. So he needs 3 more months, is what Tanya Chutkin has ruled. 3 more months to prepare for trial after. But right now it's in a pause. And I don't think she's going to be favorable to him because he lied and said that he was not working on this case. And then he went to a different case and said, no, I am working on this. We're working on this case. So he's double spoke multiple different times. The New York case will happen because they just have to wait for the decision to come back. They only need 8 trial weeks. That's what they're asking for. The Tanya Chutkin case is going to need 12 trial weeks and probably will not complete before the November election, but we will see most of the evidence against Donald Trump.
So is there a possibility, and in your opinion, you want him to be charged, but is there a possibility the Supreme Court and whoever else could push all the cases until after the election and he couldn't be convicted?
Could they push they could push the cases. It would look like partisanship. It would not be a good look. It would be a really bad look, and the Supreme Court is concerned about looking partisan.
I mean, people are already concerned about the Supreme Court after Roe versus Wade.
Right, but the thing is, like, they have to try and maintain legitimacy enough. And one of the things that happened after Roe v. Wade that I'd never seen before is, like, law professors and shit. I have friends that are in law school. They were like, these people are like constitutionalists, like they respect the court. And they literally were telling students, just ignore the ruling. We should start ignoring the ruling. That's what their decision was. So the Supreme Court, because of Marbury versus Madison, the only power that they have is the power to write a decision. They have zero enforcement power. They rely on the appearance of legitimacy. And if they don't, bad things happen, right?
Like what kind of bad things would happen?
The Dred Scott decision that helped lead to the Civil War.
Do you think that would happen?
Civil War? No.
So it wouldn't happen. So nothing bad would really happen. You don't think?
So I think there's bad things that can happen from courts and lawyers actively dismissing the decisions of the Supreme Court. You end up with a patchwork system, and
you can't
it's not good.
Go above the Supreme Court, right?
No, but the Supreme Court writes a decision. They rely on people either following it or lower courts enforcing it. Mm-hmm. What happened with Dred Scott was basically the North and the South, lawyers on both sides ignored the decision because it became too convoluted and complex, and it delegitimized the entire court.
And which is not a good thing, I don't think, right?
It's not a good thing that the Supreme Court is undermined, no.
I mean, like, those are some of the most respected people in the entire country, right?
Well, they used to be. The United States Supreme Court does not have any enforcement mechanism like the presidency does. It relies solely on whether or not people believe them. And if they don't
believe them, you can go to prison and everything if you don't.
They can't. They have no ability to order anyone to do anything. Like they have no enforcement power whatsoever. If they write a decision saying everybody should only wear blue, otherwise you could be whatever, that you have to wear blue at all times, right? And people, they don't have any way of enforcing lower courts to enforce that. It's just, do people believe this is legitimate or do they not?
Well, like with Roe versus Wade, they gave the states the ability to enforce laws, right?
Okay.
And so those states, because of what the Supreme Court did, they were allowed to give people in their states the ability to enforce laws. So in a way, they are enforcing laws, right? You could say, right?
No. It would be like a cop without, I don't know. It's like the difference between a security guard and a cop. One is the law, one is a suggestion.
A security guard can enforce a law?
Not really. I'm trying to make this. So you have writs that go down that is like, it's ordered by the court, you have to do this. That has to be followed through. Else you can do things like hold those people that refuse to enforce it. And like as a lower court, say it goes back down to a district court from the Supreme Court. Yeah. And the district court goes, you do this now. We're not going to do it. Okay. Well, you're going to be held in contempt. Criminal contempt is what we're working towards, right? The Supreme Court doesn't have that ability.
Well, let me give you this. So there's some, not even courts, there's some sheriffs in California in different areas that will not enforce laws. Can they get in trouble for that?
No. Unless it's part of unless not written, usually no.
So what if it's written into law and they aren't enforcing laws? Can you be arrested for that?
You can file an injunction against them, but it would be a state deal.
Yes,
because the Supreme Court ruled that cops do not have a duty to act. But I don't know if that applies to state courts.
I don't know either, but you know what I'm trying to say.
But no, typically speaking, you can't get in trouble for not doing your job. Typically speaking.
Okay.
So the long story short of it is this. It goes back to a court case called Marbury versus Madison. And essentially Marbury was a judge. And so basically what happened is when Adams lost the presidency, he sent out Madison to deliver all of these midnight appointments for judges. They basically just filled a federal court system with judges. And Marbury was written a summons to be on the federal bench, but did not get it before Adams' presidency ended. So he sued saying, hey, I need this appointment. I was given this appointment. It was sent out to me. I did not receive it in time. I need this appointment. The Supreme Court was ran by, what the what was his name? John Marshall. And John Marshall was Thomas Jefferson's cousin. And they hated each other. By the way, you guys should throw me some love because I had to read like 4 books to find out that piece of information. It's not widely known. But John Marshall was Thomas Jefferson's. It's like 1 line out of 4 books. Was Thomas Jefferson's cousin. They hated each other. Anyways, long story short, John Marshall said, well, he politically agreed that Marbury should be given the appointment. The problem is that if he told Thomas Jefferson, hey, you have to do this, he'd just ignore it and they would lose power, right? So he couldn't do that. He also didn't want to approve and say, no, we don't have any power. So he came up with this scheme. I know will say that he technically is supposed to be given this appointment, right? But we have no way of enforcing it because the enforcement mechanism for it is not granted in the Constitution. So he should be appointed. And basically it was like, okay, the Supreme Court gets to make legal decisions, but they can be ignored. And that was the compromise that they made. John Marshall's referred to as like the second set of founding fathers for doing that. But anyways, so basically they just turned away and gave away their ability to enforce it for the ability to rule on things. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, but I just wanted to come up here and kind of ask you a few questions and kind of like just talk to you because he may be convicted in one case, but I honestly don't believe he's going to be convicted in all of them.
I think that he will be convicted in almost every single charge. Incidentally enough, people are chirping about the drop charges. Those are the ones I thought were he was most likely to skirt. And I think there's probably a 75 to 80% chance he's convicted on those, but those were the most likely ones he was most likely to skirt.
And then I have another question. So, I mean, I don't think he should be, but why isn't he? So if this were me or you and we were in one of the cases, don't you go to jail to await your trial? Like there's a rapper that's involved in a RICO case and he's been awaiting trial for a few years. Yeah. So why isn't Trump?
No, actually, so in that instance, that person you're talking about, I forget, in Georgia, they tried it. They tried that person once and got a mistrial. So they're retrying them. Right. So Donald Trump is not in jail because he posted a bond. If this were anybody else in these instances, he would not have been given a bond. He would not have been allowed out of jail. He would not be given pretrial release, but because it's Donald Trump, he has been. He's been given a lot of preferential treatment, to be honest with you.
And do you think that's because he's Donald Trump or that's because they do that to anyone?
Nope, that's because it's Donald Trump. If it was anybody else had done what he did with the documents case, you would be sitting in an 8x8 at ADX Florence for 23 hours a day, having all of your contacts monitored by the CIA.